There's a moment that so many women describe, somewhere in the middle of fertility treatment, or after the loss, or after the decision to stop, where they look up and realize they've been grieving for years. Not just the pregnancy that didn't continue, not just the cycle that didn't work, but quietly, layer by layer, from the very beginning of the journey, and nobody saw it. Nobody named it. Nobody was there to help them carry it. Today's conversation is for every woman who has stood at the crossroads, still in the fight, or quietly stepping back from it, and felt completely alone in whatever comes next. Because childlessness, not by choice, is one of the most complex, layered, and invisible griefs a woman will ever navigate. And yet somehow the world expects you to just move on. If this resonates, stay for this conversation. Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, the intersection of pregnancy loss, fertility, trauma, and purpose, having the conversations that should have been happening all along. Today, I have with me Judi Johnson. Judi is a certified grief coach based in Auckland, New Zealand. She specialises in helping individuals navigate the complexities of grief from any major life change, with a particular focus on those who are childless, not by choice. Drawing on both professional expertise and lived experience, Judi supports clients one-to-one as they process loss, rebuild confidence, and create lives of meaning and fulfillment beyond grief. Thank you for joining us, Judi.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me on.
You're so welcome. We have a really powerful sort of chat to have today. So I am so grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you can share your experience and how we can help women navigating this as well. Did you want to share a little bit about your experience first?
Yeah, so I found myself childless not by choice. It was a circumstance thing, an absolute combination of life events that can just creep up on any of us. Dysfunctional childhood, chronic illness in my teens that led to a chronic illness through life, and dysfunctional adult relationships, which just add more layers. And in my fertile years, I was either not in the relationship that was suitable to bring a child into the world, or I was on such strong medication that I could not have carried a pregnancy. And then when I felt safe enough to have a child with somebody, it was too late. It was simply too late. I think a lot of us think that children will come along. It's an organic process, right? When the time is right. So we spend all of these years trying not to have a child, perhaps. And then when the time is right, we think, right, it's going to happen. No. And so I found that I descended into a deep sense of grief. And I didn't see myself slide down into that. I guess there were warning signs in hindsight, but it wasn't something I recognized. And I think a lot of people will do that. And as with any major grief event, whether it's losing somebody important in our lives or being childless, what tends to happen is our backstory of grief events just bang, they all crash together. And suddenly we've got all of these layers of grief and we don't know what emotion came from where. We don't know how to process it. We don't know what to do with it. So we stay stuck. We stay in this horrible place that we don't like. We don't like ourselves. Probably nobody else likes us at that point either. And we have to find a way out. And that's what I did, but it was a bit of a process. And that's what I now help other people do, in the hope that they don't spend as long in that dark place as I did.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. There was actually part of what you said, like when you just think that children come organically. I spent so much of my younger years just, yeah, like you said, trying not to fall pregnant. I'm like, no, I can't, this can't happen yet. And then when I was ready, nothing was happening. And I was
Mm.
like, what's wrong with me? And then I felt guilty for all of those years prior because I was like, I was being selfish. I was focusing on me. I should have been maybe using that time to have children. But like you said, also the relationships that we're in aren't necessarily conducive to that. And really, you don't want to bring children into the world into unsafe relationships, unsafe environments. That's not what your intention really is. But it does become this layered thing then when, like you said, it doesn't end up happening.
Mm.
And we had some really powerful sort of moments before we started recording as well. I wanted to touch on the aspect of that from the perspective of, say, reproductive loss or even infertility, where maybe they have gone through multiple losses. Maybe they've gone through multiple cycles and they're getting to a point of, I can't do this anymore mentally, emotionally. It starts to really take a toll on you. And society doesn't necessarily help you in those moments. They're just like, no, just try again. Or even if you're seeing a fertility specialist, they could be telling you, just go again, just go again. But if you're actually able to listen to your body and think, okay, this is this really what I want? But then the other path is that you're facing is potentially not having children. And there's generally no one there to support you in that moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's not realised or recognised much is the fact that our grief in the reproductive journey starts really early, way before we even understand that grief is a thing on that journey. We realise grief is a thing right near the end of it. So at the moment, perhaps that we're not getting pregnant the natural way, our grief starts there. And then, of course, if we go down the route of fertility treatment and somebody is telling us that we're going to have these procedures, the fact that we're perhaps not being able to have a child naturally, the guilt and the grief that attaches to that, because everybody else did it naturally. Of course, not everybody did, but that's our perception, isn't it? So we're building these layers of grief all along. We probably feel guilty towards a partner if it's us, perhaps. They might feel guilty towards us if it's them. So we're already building. And each time a part of that process doesn't end with a pregnancy, or that pregnancy happens but doesn't continue, whatever happens in that circumstance, we're building layers of grief. But because they're intermingled with layers of hope and joy, because we get pregnant, so there's the joy and the hope. So that grief cycle and the waves are just fluctuating. We're grieving, no, we're up because something positive's happened, and then we come crashing down perhaps because it doesn't proceed. So by the time we get to that point where we're going to question whether we're going to continue or whether we're going to stop, and it has to be our own decision, right? It has to be based upon how we feel, how our partner feels, how we're dealing with it financially, perhaps, because all of these things take a part. There's a lot of grief and a lot of guilt and resentment, perhaps, even at that point. And so that's got to be an incredibly tough decision for anybody to make. And of course, there's I've only had 3 goes, or I only had 1 go, or shall I have another go? Shall I try a different method? And then, of course, there's I can't have a child naturally. Do I look at surrogacy? Do I look at adoption? And that prolongs that grief process. I don't know what the situation is in Australia, but in New Zealand, of the 200 people who pass the assessment each year for adoption, so getting through that stringent counselling application process, only 3 people maximum get a child. The chances are unlikely that you would get a child through adoption here. So we've got, again, continued hope, disappointment, grief. So it's a very long, drawn out process. And by the time that we acknowledge that there isn't going to be a child through any method, we've probably been going through this process for an incredibly long time. And so our descent into that deep grief has not been very noticeable. But one day we find ourselves there and think, how did this happen? How on earth did I end up feeling as I do? And at that point, it's not preventable. We can't prevent ourselves getting into that depth of grief. But at that point, there's often not many people around us who can support us, because there's always that, why don't you have another go? But you've decided you don't want to. And there's other people's disappointment, isn't there? There's your sister who wanted cousins for her children. There's your parents who, or your husband's parents, or whoever, who might want grandchildren and you're not providing them, and they think that you perhaps ought to continue. Or they've already got so many grandchildren that you not having them is not really going to cause them any complications. So they're not supportive because they can't understand how you're feeling. And so the best thing at that point is to find a group who understands, find people that have been on a similar journey where they normalize how you're feeling, validate that what you're going through is normal and natural, and you're not broken.
Yeah. So that sense of feeling completely broken and that you're a failure
Mm.
is so alive and so consuming, especially like when you're going through reproductive loss or even infertility. In those moments, you're like, my body had one job, it can't do that. And then to add on top of that, then a decision that is actually not going to be your reality
Mm.
can only just really heighten those beliefs about you, about your capacity as a woman. And like you said, there's really, when you get to these moments, because they're not small, you don't go into them lightly. They're not small decisions that you're making. This is something for the rest of your life. So you need someone to help you. You are making that decision, potentially. And not a lot of people are going to be able to support you in that. And it can be, which I've noticed in women that I've supported, it can be an ongoing thing too. It's not just in those moments that you're making the decision. It can go on for years where these comments keep coming back. Oh, if only, you'd have had a child, or if only you'd not done this or XYZ, however the dynamics are playing out, whoever you're speaking to. So we have to be able to be okay. Not that you're ever going to be, you may never fully be 100% okay with that decision because your life is completely changed. But stand in your knowing that you've made the right decision for you and your family, and be able to be okay with those interactions, those conversations, those comments, maybe from society. And like you said, finding people who are in your situation is going to be so supportive of you in that moment because it's going to validate your new reality.
One thing about grief, wherever it comes from, is it affects our self confidence, our sense of self. So the childless grief really affects our sense of self because we saw ourselves as becoming a mother. We saw ourselves as having a family, and a couple is a family, but we see a family unit, we visualize a family unit. So the whole future we thought we would have really no longer exists. So our sense of self is shot to pieces. And that's something that's incredibly difficult to come out of. And something that people always talk about in this arena is acceptance. It's such the wrong word. If somebody gets to 70 and they've accepted that they're childless, that's probably a big ask. We become resigned to it, we acknowledge it, we see that it's the case. Do we accept it? No, because acceptance is saying, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's too big a ask of anybody. And when somebody in this situation is, somebody else talks to them about acceptance, it's like a red rag because it stops them in their tracks. You've halted their grief by saying, you need to accept this before you can move on. No, no, because if they waited for acceptance, they would be in that state of deep grief for such a long time because that acceptance just doesn't come. So allowing that you are where you are is about as far as that you can go. And maybe acceptance does come one day, but you can't hang your future on accepting where you are. And being okay with it with other people is again too big an ask. When we find ourselves childless, not by choice, we need to navigate that future in a way that feels possible and comfortable to us. Other people might have other expectations of us, but hey, this is us. We can't compare ourselves to other people, and they shouldn't compare us to them. And others' reactions actually speak a lot about them, not about us. Those people who say, why didn't you do this? Often they're reflecting their fears on us. It's
Yeah.
not about us at all. It's about what they're concerned about. People say, why are you childless? Good grief, what a question to ask somebody. It's just one of those questions like, do you have children? Should never be the opening gambit when you meet somebody new. What lights you up? What do you like to do? Much better. And so I think there's a long period once you acknowledge that you're childless where you have to dip in and out of social situations, family situations, Christmas, celebrations in a way that you can cope with
Mm.
without having emotional overload, without having that meltdown. Because it's always at the Christmas dinner table that somebody says, I've got some news. And your heart sinks and you think, oh God, here it comes. And they say, we're pregnant. And what does that do to that childless person at the table? You've got to be able to find ways to navigate through those situations because they're going to come thick and fast if you're in your reproductive years, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it happens. And this is the thing, you feel like you're just consistently dodging bullets when you're going through reproductive loss
Mm,
or even infertility, and then deciding, okay, we've gone through that, which was, it felt like one of the most challenging and life altering experiences in that moment. Then you make the decision, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep putting myself into these experiences anymore. I need to focus on me and my healing and all of that. So you just do decide to go down the path of choosing to be childless, not by choice. And then again, you've got all of, like you said, they come thick and fast. You're dodging bullets again. And this is where you do have to, like you said, have that support system in place because we need to be able to support ourselves and have plans even in place when those moments come in. How can you be there for yourself? How can you navigate this moment? And like you said, it's childless not by choice is one of the most complex griefs that women or families are going to experience, because it's all of everything that they've gone through prior layered into what they're experiencing now. And you can't do that alone. There has to be people in your corner to help you through that.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the difficulty is as well, a lot of the time on a childless journey, it can be quite secretive. There's a lot of shame and embarrassment attached to it, especially in the workplace, for example, because we have policy in the workplace for maternity, paternity leave, don't we? We have nothing in workplace policy for pregnancy loss
No.
or for the bereavement that follows being childless. And we don't really have much in the way of a grief policy in the workplace either. And of course, it's generally hidden. And yet, 25% of men are childless not by choice. And nobody ever talks about them in the workplace, and they can be the part of the fertility journey as well that doesn't go right. So we can find ourselves with this huge secret that is all consuming. And we spend a lot of our time in the workplace, and it's a place of bring your child to work day, baby showers, all of these sorts of things, isn't it? We go into a meeting, we sit around that table, and everyone introduces themselves. Oh, I've been here 20 years in this job for 3, and I've got 3 children. Next person says, oh, I've got 5 children for my sins. And then somebody else says, oh, would you believe it? I'm a grandmother of 2. And you just see this coming around the table towards you. You're inevitably the last person around the table. And you think, what am I going to say? By which time you're in emotional overload, your mouth's dry, you don't know what on earth you're going to say, and you manage to mutter, I've been doing this job 10 years, I've been here 2 months. And you stop, and there's a big pause where everyone waits for you to say how many children you've got. And you don't. And in the end, somebody says, next person, and you might as well have had a sign across your forehead saying, I do not have children. And you know that at the first break, when everyone gets the coffee, they're all going to say, do you want to see a picture of my children? And you're like, so you're outside pretending you're on the phone, and actually you're outside having a cry, or you're hiding in the toilet thinking, I can't be part of this conversation. The workplace is not a place for support. It's in online groups, generally Facebook groups, for people who are childless not by choice, to say exactly how they're feeling, and other people to say, do you know what? I feel exactly the same. Or I felt like that, or I've now moved through that. And that's a hallelujah moment. Somebody else has moved through it. There is hope, that type of thing. But we rarely get support from our peers. We're not part of the mum club. Mums don't understand what it means to be childless. Even if they had pregnancy loss, even if they had fertility issues, they have a child. And I know that doesn't cancel out grief from the fertility journey or grief from pregnancy loss at all. A live child does not replace that loss. I completely understand that. But they have a child. And so the two experiences just can't be compared. So that is not your place to seek support. You may get some support there, but it wouldn't be the right place to ask for it. There are better suited places to ask.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss? because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how. Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that you do find those, because it's only going to make your journey so much harder if you're not seeking it in the right places. And I totally understand what you're saying. Me going through pregnancy loss and then having a rainbow baby, I haven't had to go down that path of face. It was a fear of mine. It was a very real fear when I was going through loss. That was going to be my reality. But then we did get our live earthside child, and then I didn't need to explore that reality anymore. So you don't have to go down that path. But in speaking with women who have had to, I can completely understand where they're coming from, because they were thoughts that I was entertaining at the time and feeling like, what if that is a decision that I have to make? But then for so many women, I think you gave a statistic before, but for so many women, that is their reality. That is the decisions that they're facing in real time. It's not just something that they're entertaining anymore. It's, okay, this is now what my reality might look like. And how do I navigate this? And like we've said before, you've hit rock bottom so many times through that journey. How do we start to support ourselves in coming out of that rock bottom?
Yeah, and the first thing is self-kindness and self-compassion. Because if we can't give it to ourselves, we probably can't receive it from others. And often when somebody's grieving, somebody will say to them, "How are you doing today?" "Yeah, I'm good." But we're not. We're not. We know we're not. But it's too long an answer. We probably don't want to share that in that environment. Or we see people's faces when we start to tell them and think, yeah, I just won't say anymore. Yeah, it's about processing emotions. It's about allowing that we feel as we feel, because we do. So if we deny that to ourselves, all we're doing is shoving it down. We're not allowing it out. It's allowing ourselves to process those emotions. Yes, we feel bitter. Yes, we feel angry. Yes, we feel resentful, envious, so many emotions. Anger is one of the biggest ones. We feel so angry. And it's finding outlets for these things. And that might be, I went through a phase that I used to go to the bottle bank and hurl those wine bottles in. It was ever so therapeutic. And so is throwing stones from the beach into the sea or something like that, but doing it somewhere quite isolated so that you can cry while you do it. Having a ceremony to yourself to end that process, because when we lose somebody important to us, we have an end of life ceremony, don't we? We go and talk about them, we share stories. But this is a grief that doesn't have remembrance in a garden or a plaque, or it doesn't have a ceremony. It's not remembered by anybody else, it's only remembered by us. And so actually finding a way to commemorate that, to have our own private, just ceremonial act that is important to us. And that can bring out a lot of grief. It really can bring out a huge amount of grief. But it's working through it, understanding where the layers that we've got have come from, because often we're looking at it as a whole.
Mm.
And grief isn't a whole, it is in layers, and we can't deal with a whole. So, could you eat a whole elephant? No, but you can eat it a bite at a time. And grief is the same. You take a bit out and you see where it's come from and you work with that. And then when you're strong enough, you take another bit out and you work with that. And it's a slow process until suddenly you think, oh my God, I'm seeing the world in colour now, not in black and white. And I'm seeing joy and feeling joy. And you start to realize that you are coming out of your grief. But it is a long process, it is a slow process. But you, at one stage, you think, how do I spend the next 30 or 40 years of my life feeling like this? Because I just can't. This is just an untenable situation. You're not saying you want to end your life, you're just saying, I can't see how I can live like this. And then one day you think, oh, yeah, yeah, I can see some hope for the future now. I can see some positivity and I can see how I might enjoy my future going forwards. But it takes time.
Yeah, and I remember that so clearly for my journey. There was just a moment in time where I asked myself, I'm like, can I live like this anymore? And I was like, uh, it was just this resounding no. I can't move through life like this anymore. I need to proactively do something to help myself out of where I am. And I've spoken also to women who are stuck for a really extended period of time in their grief because they don't have the ability to proactively move through their grief. And unfortunately, time alone does not heal our grief. We need to use that time to take steps towards, like you said, pulling out those little pieces, witnessing them, processing them, moving through them, and doing that multiple times over because we do each one of our moments that we have in life are attached with those griefs. And like you said, when you're looking at it at a whole, you can't see all of those different moments that have grief attached to them. But when you start to untangle all of that and dismantle it, we can start to see, okay, grief was attached to this moment in time. I need to process that and the emotions that came with that and whatever else is there. Also, the grief was attached to this other moment in time. And I often say that even with our emotions, with trauma, with triggers, like it doesn't, we think of also triggers just as this whole, and then I'll just work on my trigger. And then a year or 6 months or a week later, you're still triggered by the same thing. And I'm like, it's not because it's the same thing, it's the same emotion that's coming up, but it was attached to a different point in time. So we need to understand, okay, not all of our situations, our experiences, like are a whole, like you were saying.
Mm.
That's what we think we're dealing with at the end. But I like what you said about the elephant. You can't eat a whole elephant in one go. We do need to pull it apart and start to see what's there. When you said about anger, because I remember feeling so much anger just in my journey, my healing journey. There are, I've seen them. I don't know how prevalent they are in Australia or even in New Zealand, but the wreck-it rooms where people can go and like physically wreck stuff. Like it's just finding those
Mm.
safe outlets for your emotions. Even for my daughter, for her anger, I bought her a little punching bag. So she's got this little, when she feels this overwhelming sense of anger, she can go and punch her punching bag, because anger itself is not, it's not a bad emotion. Society perceives it as bad. You can't be angry, and especially females, you cannot be angry. That's a disgusting emotion. But it's not, when you actually, because emotions, they're just energy. And anger is, it's like, it's a repelling emotion. It's a boundary emotion. Something has been crossed, whether it's a value, a belief, something in you has been crossed, and you're angry. And that's okay. We just need to find that safe outlet for it.
All emotions are healthy, aren't they, in the end? But what happened when we were kids were we got angry, and our anger wasn't welcomed. And in some cases, it was met with extreme anger from a parent.
Yeah.
So our learning was that we couldn't be angry. So we start to get angry, we're getting there. Oh God, can't be angry because, and that subconscious event is stored in us, isn't it, from when we were 3 years old or something, that says, no, anger is not welcome here. And so we suppress it. And sometimes it can be really good in our grief to go and learn a sport like pickleball, for example. You whack that ball, and it's amazing. Just slightly off tangent, but factual. Me and three friends, we call ourselves the menopause pickleball ladies, all perimenopause, and we get on that court and we say what's on our mind and wallop that ball, and we have an incredible laugh in doing it. We lift the weight off our shoulders, we solve the world's problems, and everyone comes away feeling better. So it's actually finding an outlet, and it doesn't have to be a destructive outlet. It can be a very positive outlet that's lots of fun. And I do this with three ladies that have multiple children. So it breaks down the barriers of being childless to go and do these things, because they've got nothing to do with children. Doesn't matter who's got a child, who hasn't got a child. There's a unity in what we're sharing. And I think one of the things when you get through your childless journey is you realize that you are friendship material again, because you probably weren't in it because you were so angry and you didn't like yourself. And so other people probably don't like you if you don't like yourself. But once you come out the other side and you've done the work on yourself and you actually think, God, yes, I've got some stuff to give the world here, and I realize what my purpose is a bit more, you start to gather people again, because people can see that you've got something to offer. And that's when you actually start to break into the mum communities. Accidentally, you find yourself part of the mum communities, even though you're not a mum, because they realize that they can have a conversation with you that doesn't include mentioning children. And actually, they probably quite like to not talk about their children for once. And these are people with older children, you understand. But so it actually turns around. And yes, they're going to have grandchildren, and that's going to be a massive dip into grief again, because that's what happens, and we have to be prepared for this. But I think we're a bit more prepared the second time round. But we do get to mix back into circles that aren't just childless and child free. We can be in circles that people are at different life stages with kids and grandkids, and we can be welcomed into those. So for anybody who's thinking, I've got to distance myself from people with children, yes, you do, for a while. Yes, it's for your own safety. You need to draw those boundaries. You need to protect your own emotions. You need to keep those coping mechanisms going so that you can weather through those events. But you will get to the stage where you can be with people who have children, and they can enjoy you and you can enjoy them. It is there.
Yeah, it's not like you have to avoid people with kids for the rest of your life, or situations, or even like you said, there are definitely a lot of places that you can't avoid, like your workplace and stuff like that. But that's not the place that you are in for the rest of your life when you start to allow yourself to work through your emotions, your grief, the experience itself, the decision. It is that, like you said, you can start to see the world in color again. And everything does start to shift. And you do start to become, we get a new sense of self. You start to become, like you said, a functioning member of society again, where maybe for a period of time you felt like that was just not possible. And that's okay. It's okay to be there in those moments too and be in self-preservation mode.
Mm.
I love everything that we've been able to speak about today. Is there something that we haven't covered that you want to cover?
I think really that people will always break through or try to break through your boundaries. And one of the things we really struggle with on this journey is one, setting a boundary, and two, maintaining them. Because when we lose that sense of self, we lose the confidence, we struggle to set boundaries. And by nature of us being human, we all have different values and beliefs. And so there will be people who push those buttons and say, why didn't you try this? And have you tried adoption? Or have you thought about it? Of course you didn't. What a silly question that is. But there will always be people who push those boundaries. And one of the most important things is finding a way, and that's probably working with somebody, to maintain boundaries to protect yourself. Because the most important thing on this journey is you protect yourself before you protect anybody else. And that sense of self is going to be eroded by people who want to ask intrusive questions that are none of their business. This really is about you, not about them. So maintain those boundaries, find coping mechanisms. It's so important with emotional overwhelm, because it can happen when we're driving, we could be on public transport, in a work meeting, just around the Christmas dinner table, any of those things. We don't want to be the person who is triggered and has to get up and run out of that room, because the shame and embarrassment that attach to that act are things that we struggle to come back from. So have coping mechanisms, practice them in advance, make sure you know exactly how to use them, have safe words with a partner to get you out of a situation, have a time plan. We're going to leave at exactly 11 o'clock, irrespective of anything else type of thing. Set an alarm on your phone. Just make sure that you're safe, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And those things will help you get through this journey without being in that triggering situation that sets you backwards. Don't allow other people to set you backwards. So I think that's the best advice I could give to people, is look after you in this journey.
Yeah, it is so true. Like you said, no one else is going to be able to do it for you. And as much as we want to hand that over to someone to say, just do it for me, make the decisions for me because I can't do it for myself, we have to take that power back for us. We have to be the one that does look after us, that does put these things in place, because that is, again, that's proactively helping yourself through this situation.
I waited for years, literally, thinking somebody else would change things for me, somebody would rescue me. And one day I thought, oh, perhaps that's not going to happen. And that was an awful realization that I was going to have to do something about it myself. It really was. I thought, what am I going to do? I say what I said just now quite forcefully, in as much as, please don't do what I did. Don't do what I did. Do something different, because you do not want to end up where I did.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like we're in these, usually when we're in these healing spaces, we're here because either it's been our experience and we want you to not go down the potholes
Mm.
that we went into and potentially stay in those spaces for long periods of time. We're here to show you that there are ways forward and that you don't have to make, yes, we all make mistakes, but you don't necessarily have to make the same ones. When you've got someone on the other side of you that has been there and saying, do this instead. Take the time for you to do this instead. Because without the support, everyone can do or go into the places that we went into and spend years in those spaces. But we're here to say you don't have to spend years there. You can come through that. There is tools, there is support, there are things that you can proactively do. And there are people like yourself, Judi, who are supporting women in doing that. Thank you for everything that you've shared so far in this conversation.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's been a great conversation today.
Yeah, I know you like this, the childless not by choice has not been my experience, but like I said, I entertained that idea. So I know the power of having this conversation. I know the power that it can have for women who are potentially facing that path, or they're really trying to hold on to, maybe I should just do another, maybe I should just try it again for another pregnancy, or maybe I should just do another round, or maybe I should just do this other thing. And you will get that from society. You haven't tried enough. Try another time. But just to listen to your body and just to know that when is enough for you, not
And you're
comparing.
enough, good enough,
Yeah.
not somebody else's. Your measure is the measure to use, not somebody else's, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Not comparing. And
Mm,
I know you've said that a few times today. Don't compare our stories to someone else's just because they tried one more time or they did this other thing. Like you just said, your enough is enough.
mm.
And then to seek the right support for you. Did you want to share where people can find you, or if you have obviously something available for them to come into?
Sure. So my website is embraceyourfuture.net. On there, you'll find a coping mechanisms free download, which is really useful for those moments of emotional overwhelm. You can download it, you can print it, you can do whatever you want with it. I also have a breaking free from people pleasing free download, because a lot of us go down some of the routes with grief based upon being people pleasers, and that's something that's in us from childhood that we don't even know that we're doing. There's a lot of information on my website. I also have a childless Facebook group where I post videos a lot, and I have Embrace Your Future by Judi as my Instagram. So there's a lot of videos on there, a lot of validation for anybody going through these experiences.
Yeah, so amazing. Thank you so much for being here in this space to support women in this part of their journey, because, like we've spoken about, there's just not enough awareness, there's not enough conversations around this, and definitely not going to find that support from general society or even sometimes friendship groups or family. So thank you for having the capacity to use your experience and support women going through this phase in their life. And I'll make sure all of the stuff is linked in the show notes as well so people can find you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sharna.
Thank you, Judi, again for being a part of the podcast. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.